Good evening, Hampton University. Welcome to today's National Black AIDS Awareness Program. I am Calvin Harris, Assistant Director of Student Activities, and our partnering co-host today is Ms. Hill. You want to introduce yourself?
I will. My name is Miss Megan Hill, and I am the Certified Health Education Specialist for the university through the Health Center. And so we are here today, as always, partnering with student activities for part two, basically, of Your Health Matters. And then I will let Mr. Harris kind of go and talk about what this event is going to be about today.
All right. On today, we are joined with the peer health counselors of the Health Center underneath the leadership for this particular program, Nurse Val. We're just going to be talking about our health. If any of you all have seen our previous Health Matter events, we're talking about things that are affecting the African American community, our Hampton University community, and worldwide. And right now, in the midst of a pandemic, we must not forget about things that are in place from the past before we have entered this time of our life. In 2021, it is really relevant that we all get tested. On Sunday was the actual National Black AIDS Day, but we are observing it today via Hampton University and our students and our community. So today we're just going to have a general conversation, list some statistics. If you all have any questions, right there on the screen, you do have an option to enter in any questions in your comment section. The host will see it and the panel will be able to answer any questions. If you have any comments, we will acknowledge you. But please enjoy this program. Hope you take away something from it. And now we will turn it over to Nurse Val. You all can go ahead and introduce yourselves.
So good evening. I am Nurse Val, and I have had the privilege of being able to work with Hampton University Student Health Center, Student Activity, Student Life on another Your Health Matters. So thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to be moderating this panel. I'm going to turn it over to the other peer health educators to introduce themselves. But tonight we're just going to be having a casual talk about sex, about sexual health, about HIV/AIDS awareness, and just all things related to our health. So I will turn it over to Jaya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jaya Walker. I'm a third-year health science student with a concentration in policy and administration from Virginia Beach, and I'm a part of the peer health educators. I'm really excited to be here. I'm glad to be a part of the conversation, and I'm hoping we can shed some light on some disparities in the Black community.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samira Brown. I'm a third-year kinesiology major, Spanish minor from Southern Maryland, and I am a certified peer health educator with the Hampton University Health Center. Just like what Jaya said, I'm very excited for tonight. I think this is good conversation. I think this is needed conversation, especially in the Black community, especially with young people, us college students. So I look forward to hearing your questions, answering your questions, and having a dialogue with my fellow panelists.
And Socrates.
Hello, my name is Socrates Dulo. I'm in the third year, 5-year MBA program from Jersey, New Jersey. I'm actually glad to be here tonight. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation as well as seeing other minds and thoughts and going from there. So, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabe Lewis. I'm a fourth-year business management major from Dallas, Texas. I'm also a certified peer health educator, and I'm excited to be here and just have an open conversation and dialogue.
Awesome. So now that we've gotten past the introductions, let's get down to the topic at hand. So on the flyer, it says exposing misguidance on sex and STDs. So I'm going to ask those of you, again, who are still in college, since I've been far removed for a little bit, what are some, common misconceptions that you hear as it relates to HIV, AIDS, STDs, pregnancy, and things of that nature? You can get it, you can't get it. We're exempt because, we're young. So whoever wants to start, let's just talk about what are some of the things that you've heard, some rumors, some misconceptions.
I know being on campus as a young student, you hear a lot about your friends, or you just know of people that are sexually active. And now, again, there's nothing wrong with being sexually active. We as humans, that's a natural urge that we have. There's nothing wrong with it as long as you're being safe. But I know the use of, contraceptives is not really common A lot of women will be on birth control, but they think that exempts them from everything that could happen. Birth control truly can only prevent pregnancy to the percentage that it is projected to do so. It doesn't protect you from STDs, STIs. There's a lot of STDs that either don't show up in women, but they show up in men, or vice versa. So it's really just being safe and making sure you are safe. So I'd say that misconception would be that students don't really consider all that could happen once they've made the decision to have sex, to start having sex, and to be sexually active.
Excellent. Okay, so again, we're looking at, the fact that if what I'm really worried about is not having a baby, then all I need to do is be on birth control, versus thinking about that maybe I do not want to have a baby and also don't want any STDs or STIs. And we're going to come back to the distinction between the two in a minute, but I know, Jaya, you had something to say about that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a common misconception specifically about HIV and AIDS for our generation is that it's not as prevalent as other STDs, which isn't true. Like, it's still a very big issue within our country. But a lot of times when you talk to your fellow peers about STDs, you mainly hear about herpes or chlamydia or gonorrhea. You never really hear people talk about HIV. And I think a part of it might be because our generation didn't really grow up when the HIV epidemic was at its peak. We're on the decline, but it's still a very serious issue that we need to continue to have a conversation about, and to continue to make sure that we're getting tested and that we're educating ourselves and that we're continuing the conversation, which is why stuff like this is very important.
I think that's a really good point too about the time that you're coming up. HIV and AIDS is still very much a real public health issue. It's a real issue in the Black community. But again, we're hearing more about other types of STDs as well as other types of health issues, because it's almost as if HIV AIDS is under control. People are living with it. They're living healthier lives. And so we're talking about other things. So I think that's an excellent point. Did either of you gentlemen have anything you wanted to add to that? Any misconceptions or things that you've heard?
Yeah, I jump in. I think some misconceptions probably definitely just kind of being an RA, and getting incoming freshmen. One of the first things I heard was you can double up. You really, really, I cannot stress that enough. Should not do that. That friction can actually make it break quicker. And if that's something you're trying to avoid, that's not the best way to do it. But it's a common kind of misconceptions that you can do things. It's almost a myth, but they assume that adding another layer is something that's protective from the top of your head. That may sound correct, especially to people that didn't go take the time to research it. But that's something that encouraging people to go and research that, and to always kind of follow directions that are on the packet, or to ask somebody that knows a little bit more about that. I definitely stress.
I think that's a great point too, because especially in this COVID environment, what are we hearing? Double up on your masks. Do not double up on your condoms, because as you said, that friction will cause a huge issue. So definitely a good point. Excellent. I love that. And then I just wanted to circle back to the whole STD, STI thing. I know when I was coming up many, many moons ago, it was all about STDs. And then eventually they changed it to STIs because they were saying that sexually transmitted diseases didn't really encompass all of the various things that fall under that title. So they changed it over to infection because that didn't have as negative of a connotation. So had any of you ever heard that before?
Yeah, I've heard kind of that transition to kind of make it a little less stigmatized, because especially when you hear the term STDs, you assume some people assume that they're unclean or dirty. You don't want that to ever get into somebody's mind that they're unclean and dirty, especially when something a lot of these are treatable. If they seek out help in time, that's something that they can cure.
Yes, absolutely. And learning, what it is that you have or what you might be exposed to. So there's the bacteria, there's the infections, there's the viruses. And as we know now, dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, sort of what that means in terms of the virus, living in your system, being dormant, whether or not you have an active infection, if you have a sexually transmitted infection that's a virus versus a bacteria, which can indeed, you take some type of medication for that, and you're able to get rid of that. So there's the treatable, and then there's the curable. And I always think that that's definitely, something to be mindful of. Also, you want to make sure that you're having conversations in advance of being exposed to a lot of these things. So as we talked about with the last Your Health Matters, you don't wait until there's a problem for you to really have the information, the knowledge, and have the conversations with your partners about, what it is that you might be exposed to. Anything else around STDs, HIV, and AIDS that you all would want to kind of share with the audience or impart?
Yeah, I don't mind tagging in on the end. I just wanted to say that this is all about being proactive. I don't think anybody wants to, contract an STD, develop an STI, get AIDS or get HIV and have that turn into AIDS. So it's all about being proactive in what activities you're taking part in and who is that you're taking part in with. Are you all being tested? We have First Fridays, fortunately, at Hampton University with the health center. So they get free testing. You need to go test it for free. Whether you're single, whether you have a partner, whether you haven't had a partner in a month, a year, 10 years, it's great to just go get tested just to know for yourself. So you can just be prepared next time you have a partner. I think a lot of people, a lot of our generation, we're very more casual with our sexual encounters and our sexual relationships with people. So we're not really stopping to say, hey, have you been tested? When's the last time you were tested? But I think we need to be more candid in talking about those with our partners, because just like we said, it could just happen. You could just get gonorrhea, you can get herpes. And, trichomoniasis is not seen in men. So a man can contract that and he wouldn't know. And he could just go around giving that to several women. And they will be having issues, but not him, and he would know. So just being proactive for yourself, for your partners, because you have sex with one person and then you have sex with the that they've had sex with, and it'll just continue on. So yeah, I would just say be proactive in making sure that you're getting yourself tested and protecting yourself so you can protect everyone else.
Excellent. Prevention is still the best thing that we can absolutely do. And I know I've seen it before. We've all seen it in movies, where the girl is like, I just came from the doctor and I've got this. And he's like, well, I feel fine. Like I'm good. So I think that's an excellent point about, who actually might feel symptoms and who may not. Anything else around there? Was there anything before you all became peer health educators that you had misconceptions about and now you feel even more educated and empowered to talk about because of your experience as a peer health educator?
I can say, especially with becoming a peer health educator or just interacting with Ms. Hill in general, I've become a lot more knowledgeable about STDs. Not to bash like the public school system, but I feel like they kind of treat STDs with kitty gloves, and they don't really get down to like the nitty gritty of how you should be having, like Samir was talking about, you should be having these conversations with your partners. You should regularly be getting tested. You should be taking precautions in order to make sure that you're healthy. So before then, like in public school, you're kind of just told like, just don't have sex, which is kind of like, I mean, yeah, but like also not that helpful for people who are having sex, because I don't feel as though I was really given the tools to make sure that I was safe. When I got on Hampton, something that really I remember it was in VC Suites, that's my freshman dorm. Ms. Hill came in and talked to us about STDs, and my eyes were like this the whole time, because she kind of like put the fear in God in me, because she was sharing so many like different common misconceptions about STDs and how, like Samir was talking about, how sometimes in college it's more of a atmosphere of like casual sex, like that's part of the culture. So it's really important to regularly get tested, know who you're having sex with, and making sure that you guys are both being safe. So that's, as a peer health educator, I've gained more knowledge, and I've learn how to not only like to have the conversation, but to like educate my friends, and making sure that there's more conversations we have about STDs and stuff.
Awesome. And shout out to Ms. Hill and the Hampton University Student Health Center and all the great things that they're doing. I know the information is going to be put in the chat, but if you have questions, if you need resources, if you need information, if you need testing, make sure, even though you are not there on campus, they are still available to assist you. So make sure, again, you're checking in the chat to get that information. To the gentleman in the room, anything that you feel better about or think you're more apt to be able to speak to because you're now a peer health educator?
I would say, me personally, is saying having that conversation with your parents as well as your partners. I feel like when beforehand, I feel as though I couldn't be able to have that conversation, but I feel as though being a peer health educator, I was able to understand that it's a part of life and having those conversations. And because in high school, you really, it's kind of cliche and like we really don't want to do it, but now being adult and moving into adulthood, just having a conversation, just having that outlook, and just making sure you're really being upfront and being straightforward with you and everyone you're around, as well as your partners.
Absolutely. And that is important too, because like you said, when we're in high school and we're younger and your parents come to have the talk, you just like, I'm not trying to do this with you. But if your friends or your peers came to you, you can talk all day long. It just feels more comfortable. But then as we get older and we evolve and we realize that these are healthy conversations that we should be having, it does make it easier. And it's important to be able to talk to our parents about that. So I think that's an excellent point. Gabe, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll definitely piggyback off of Socrates. I think just in general, like beforehand, I'm from Dallas, I'm from Texas, and it was definitely, as Jaya pointed out, like an absence only type of education. And there wasn't really many people you could really just go and ask and like, hey, like I want to know a little bit more about this. And could you explain to me in a way that I'll get it and doesn't feel awkward to be a part of? And so kind of learning more about it, I'm able to have those conversations with my friends themselves, and kind of, be able to bounce kind of as like a resonance board for each other, to kind of understand a little bit more and kind of understand it's not a stigma that we should be looking at, but kind of how can we develop as people, in college and get past that stigma to learn more about ourselves and others.
Awesome. So we talked a lot about, STDs. Oh, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. We have our first question from the comments, and it's pertaining to what we were talking about. It says, since we aren't on campus right now, what are some resources students can look for in their hometowns?
Oh, excellent. Did any of you want to take that? You want me to take it? It's totally up to you.
I can start off. So if you have a primary care physician, that's a great resource. They should be able to give you some STD testing or giving you some information if you have any questions. If you don't have a primary care physician, your local health department should have some free or reduced price services as far as like STD testing, pregnancy tests, and they should be able to give you some information about sexual health if you want some more information.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add to that? Yeah, and that's excellent. And we're living in the technology age now. So a quick Google search of, whatever the local health department is or the Planned Parenthood, or you can just put in, HIV, STD resources in my community, or put in your zip code and you'll be able to find that. So excellent. Were there any other questions, Samira? Because I didn't want to mess up the chat.
No, nothing for right now, but
Okay.
I feel like we're going to get some more. So we can just keep the conversation going.
Awesome. So, and we'll keep coming back to that because all of this is related. When you think about your health, you can't compartmentalize and say, oh, okay, well, we'll just talk about this section and then that. All of it is overarching. So as we're looking at our sexual health, we also want to look at rebalancing our overall health. And so again, we're in the midst of the COVID pandemic, there's the racial pandemic, and then there's just regular life and all of you trying to navigate, your health in the midst of all of this. So let's kind of talk about what that's been like for you, in terms of going and getting your standard care. You're not necessarily on campus, so you're not at the student health center. So what is it like now, with you, managing your stress or, having somewhere that you can go to talk about various things, or if you're not feeling well, what's that been like for you, kind of navigating this virtual space?
I know when the pandemic started, it was kind of, though, I started one of those games. You guys know those video games where you kind of build a city and you build it from the ground up and you have to continue to earn money, invest back in. I felt like I had to rebuild my entire support system, rebuild the entire way I worked my life. I was so scheduled on campus. I had everything in order, places that I would go. I would go to school at this time. I would go eat at this time, hang out with friends at this time, do homework at this time. And I had to come home, adjust that entirely to now being at home. in my house all the time. I had to learn to talk to my friends differently. I couldn't just, Jay and I lived right next door to each other, so I couldn't just go next door and just go knock on her door to go hang out with her. It's kind of just understanding that other people will have to work. You may not work, but your friends have work schedules. Class schedules are different. So I think a lot of that was just changing the schedule, and that had to deal with the stressors that were part of the pandemic. How are you going to analyze your stress and manage your stress now that you've had to revamp your whole life? So I think that the pandemic has affected many points of our life, physical health, mental health, sexual health, spiritual health, but just being able to alter it and, get behind it, get in front of it and pick and choose, what you want to do, when you want to do it, so that you're making sure your health entirety is maintaining to a level that is healthy for you.
Awesome. And it's tough to pivot, even as an adult. It's just like, but I'm used to this. And when we get a routine and that routine is broken, or we have to shift or adjust, change is the only thing that's consistent, and none of us like it. And so I can honestly say it's probably taken from March to December for me to maybe get to a point where, okay, I'm comfortable and I know how life works. As soon as you get comfortable, there's about to be another shift. And so then we have to, get back to, being back on campus and physically being in an office or doing whatever. So that's another shift, but that's awesome. Anybody else?
I think for me, same as with Samir, like trying to restructure my life and trying to get back into a schedule that works for me. Another thing that I've kind of been struggling with, love my parents, but being at home with my parents after being like, I didn't realize like it was such a difference. Like I thought, I've lived with them my whole lives. Like I'll just go back to living with them. It's completely different. So kind of like reworking that relationship and kind of like setting boundaries and like making sure, like, cause I think at first it was kind of like they were in the mindset like, oh, this is like Jaya being at home when she was in high school. It's not the same. Like I have different responsibilities. I have different things I need to do. So kind of like having that conversation with my parents and making sure that we were on the same page with things and like setting boundaries. I think that goes a long way with helping the transition to being virtual in college, so that you don't feel like you're like stuck being back in high school, but also like trying to keep some type of independence while being at home,
Excellent. And everybody's different now, so when you come home for winter break or summer break, it's a condensed amount of time, but it's like, no, I'm here for the duration until we can get this pandemic under control. So I love what you said about creating boundaries. And I think that's important, because when people see that you're home, they think that you're home, that you're present, that you're available. And it's like, no, this is just the location that I now have to use for everything that I do. So I'm still in school. I still maybe have committees and organizations that I'm a part of. And so I'm here, but I'm not really here, so it is absolutely an adjustment. So having those conversations, I think, is absolutely important. Anybody else?
You hit the nail on the head with that one. I'm sorry to jump back in, but
Please.
I have a problem. I like to help people. So, and my friend was literally just telling me this the other day. She said, when people call you, you don't have to answer. I said, oh, you're right. I can just say, I can't talk right now. And then I won't have to talk to them. But no, I definitely had a hard time setting boundaries during the pandemic. I try to get my homework started no later than 9, but I'm on the phone at 9 o'clock. People keep calling me. I'll call you back. Don't call her back. You're on the phone with her. One of my littles will call. I have a problem making myself unavailable for my sake. But yeah, just understanding that just because I'm at home doesn't mean I'm available to talk to you. But yeah, I loved what you said. I don't know, that made me laugh.
And even if I am available, maybe I don't wish to be available, at this time, because now you're having to reconfigure what time for Samira looks like. What is that like? And I mean, we're all available. I have people, they'll be like, oh, well, Valerie's around. And I mean, I usually am, but it's still just like sometimes you just have to let the phone ring, and you have to let the text remain on red or just don't look at it at all. And it's tough because I think most of us don't want to disappoint, and we want to make sure that we're not missing the important call or the important text. We don't want to have any of that remorse, but sometimes you just have to, especially now where everybody is, our emotions are at an all-time high. We're still trying to figure this out. We're having to make decisions about various things. Sometimes you just got to step back, even if that's like finding a closet to sit in for a few minutes, just to get away, or if that's going to sit in your car and just like, okay, I just need a few minutes. So boundaries are really important. And you'll find too that when you go back on campus, you may have to reestablish boundaries. And they may, everything may look different than it has before. And different's not bad, it's just different. So absolutely. What about for the gentleman in the room? Has anything been different for you being home?
I would say probably the hardest thing was probably getting adjusted with classes. I feel as though I kind of had to reteach myself and like make sure that I have to understand that I'm still in class, because sometimes it feels optional at this point. Sometimes that phone comes out and then I'm on TikTok for hours. So that was like one of the hardest parts, is like really calibrating myself to make sure that I'm still paying attention in class and making sure the work's getting done, as well as learning. Overall, I'm going to need this for life. So I feel like that's something that I had to like discern which was important, which is not, and making sure I'm staying on top of that. That's probably something I had to adjust with the most.
Yeah, it's tough when all you have to do is just move the mouse around to make sure you're green and not yellow or red. Sometimes you get lost in that, and everything is accessible. It's right at your fingertips. You don't have to sneak if you want to get on your phone or on the internet, because in class, they might look at you, but here it's just like, nah. And if you don't have to have your screen on, forget it. Forget it. If that's optional, yeah, learning can seem like it's optional. Gabe, I saw that you had taken your mic off.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the same for me. Like, I know when we first got kind of sent home, I had a 9 a.m. class that became an 8 a.m. class. And so anybody that knows me, I don't like getting up early. So that 8 a.m. class kind of came class optional at times. And so I used to get up and try to like turn it on. I'd be right back to sleep in bed. I don't know if my professor heard that, but it don't really matter. But yeah, like getting used to that, like, I don't know, like that shift from, having like that personal inner feeling of responsibility that, you have to get up and, go to that class to now you really just roll over and log in the class and go right back to sleep. It's an adjustment that took me a little bit longer, especially since, being at home, you kind of get a little bit of shift. When I was at college, I knew if I was home, I was on break. Going back home, it felt, like a break, and then getting used to it's not break, it's class. And on top of that, because you have extra time, you need to find something else to do. It was definitely like an incremental adjustment.
Excellent.
So, hello everyone. So, just I think we might be having some technical difficulties with our YouTube. So, I did receive a few text messages. So, I want to be very clear that you all are talking about mental health. And one of the things that the students are talking about, and we're going to tie back into our goal of HIV, is because a lot of people don't go to get tested because of the fear of testing positive. And so that's affecting them mentally. So although we are doing a pandemic, and I love the conversation on mental health around classes and stuff, but when we think about getting tested, one of the problems in the African American community is the fear. A lot of us have grown up with the thought of, some Black men especially don't go to the doctor until it really gets serious, whereas Black women go because of more female issues and stuff. They go on a more regular basis and stuff like that. But then we have issues where we go to the doctors and a lot of physicians are testing us for what we came in for, not overall global testing. So if you don't go in there asking to be tested for STDs, STIs, and other things like that, then we're in a pandemic. So one of the prevention challenges that that a student has brought to my attention on the CDC website says, HIV stigma is common amongst people who have HIV and negatively affects their quality of life. The stigma and fear of discrimination may prevent African American people with HIV from getting the care they need or disclosing their status because of the fear of being judged. Can we just talk about that a little bit? I know you all are all in college, and, you know, although we always promote abstinence, you do have, you know, not only HIV out there, but we have other infections that could come. So I just want you all to start talking about some of those prevention aspects and related to how it is on the campus so that we can be offering more resources to our students. All right. If I get any more questions, I'm going to pop back in.
Cool.
I just, I can speak for a little bit. So I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and HIV/AIDS, when it was an epidemic, it was really present in that community amongst Black men. So it was a stigma if you found out. Gay Black men did not want people to find out they were gay because, you know, it'd be tied together, assuming that they were sick or with HIV and AIDS. And I think one thing we need to think about is HIV, they're not necessarily sick because they won't appear to be sick. HIV doesn't, you know, chain you to a bed. It's a slow degradation of your immune system and your body, you know, attacking itself. And then once you get to a certain point, a certain level, then it develops and then you can contract AIDS. But that takes, you know, 10 to 15 years. I just think educating amongst the students of Hampton, I think a lot of people are, like Jay said earlier, we're not living in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. So a lot of people don't know about it. So just educating students about it, educating students about how it can be transmitted. Because, you know, people think, you know, you pass by someone with HIV and you can catch it. That's not what it is. It's passed through bodily fluids. But then again, kissing, you might not contract it from kissing. It's more like needles or, you know, any other sexual bodily fluid. And another thing is people that have HIV, as long as they're taking their medications, they're free to have, you know, sexual intercourse or any sexual relations with partners or whatever safely because they take their medication. It'll keep down their infection levels and they'll be fine to do that. So I just think the more educated that we are as students, the more safe we can be amongst each other.
Excellent.
I totally agree with Samira. I think a lot of going off on more stigmas that are associated with HIV, since it's prevalent in the LGBTQ community, a lot of times people who are heterosexual, when they contract HIV, it's kind of like they don't want anyone to know, because I think it's only a disease that affects people that are in the LGBTQ community, which is completely false. It affects people, all types of people all over the country, and it's something that we all need to like work together to help mitigate this issue. Also, when we were talking about treatments, that's another disparity for HIV for the Black community, is that they're not receiving treatments and they're not getting diagnosed early. Like with any other disease, like the earlier that you get it diagnosed, the better, the more likely your outcome will be positive. So it's important to make sure that you're getting tested, and then once you're getting tested, you're making sure that you get the proper treatment and you're keeping up with that treatment so you can remain healthy. Because there's so much stigma associated with STDs overall. Like I think it was Gabe who was talking about earlier that sometimes STDs is seen as like a dirty word. Like people might look at you differently. And that can be difficult. Like that's not something that's small. Like that's something that's very significant and impactful in your life. But overall, your health is more important. So it's very important that you be proactive and that you're getting tested and that you're making sure that you're receiving the correct treatment.
And then just to jump back in, Jaya was saying something regarding people getting, you know, their test and things like that. So I wanted to share also, in the midst of a pandemic, right now, people have not been going to the doctor as often for their preventative care. So preventative care would be things like their annual checkups, their STI testing and things like that. And so that is something also that you want to make sure that you're being conscious of, especially if you're going into the situation or if you're deciding, okay, I like this person, I think we can take it to the next level. But a lot of times people may not know their status right now in the midst of a pandemic. And so that's something that you also want to take consideration of as well. And then just what are some precautions that you think of having, if you're having sex in the middle of a pandemic, right? And so how is COVID transmitted? We have to think about that as well as we navigate sexual intercourse, as well as our risk for, HIV, AIDS, STIs. But now we also have that risk of possibly catching COVID, COVID-19. So that's something that you want to take into consideration. But when people are locked up and they're in quarantine, how do you guys think the numbers, what do you think that's looking like? Do you think people are having sex more often? Now they're having higher risk? Or what are you guys thinking? How do you feel like COVID is affecting STD rates or just in general?
If nobody wants to, oh, go ahead, Socrates. Here, you can help.
I personally believe that sex would be going up due to the fact that people are alone more, like being in the house, and that's kind of like taking a toll on their like mental health. And being by themselves, they kind of want to have that type of warmth or just some type of affection. So I do kind of see a correlation where it would go up, and I feel like moving forward, we do need to tackle that, preferably through the summer months as we're going on towards as it starts to get hotter and hotter. People may start to disregard the protocols and go outside regardless. So I feel as though we should use that time to really crack down on being protective and having that conversation.
Right. And oftentimes we're not here to scare. We are here to educate. And one thing about it, I was doing some quick research. In 2019, it says in the African American community, 6 in 7 African Americans had the virus. It is now 2021. That's serious. So at the end of 2019, 482,000 African Americans had the virus. So where are we today with that? You know what I'm saying? And what a lot of important things is with any infection, disease, illness that you may have, you have to take your medicine. You have to get regular care. It is not something that just through, although we might all be spiritual people and pray on it and think it's going to go away, in the meantime, we have to do our part in protecting ourselves and making sure that we cut down on the spread of it. So it is very imperative that, and I know that Hampton University Health Center does an excellent job of it. Another misconception is people think if they get tested, their name is going to be disclosed. Everything is confidential. Okay, there are laws in place to protect you and your medical information. Employers can't find out those type of things. You have that protection. So we must always remember that when we go to get tested, that when you go to check on yourself to protect others, there are things in place that protect you. And that helps to cut down on the spread because you never want something to keep going inside of your body and to the point where you cannot control it. But just the preventative care, as Ms. Hill mentioned, it is very imperative that you all go to your local clinics, your local doctors. Most people can dial 311 and find out where your local test centers are. Sometimes you can find programs, just how we all were able to go to Walgreens, church parking lots to get COVID tested. There are places where you can get tested for free and not have to use your medical insurance. I am not educated to know all of the different forms of testing that are out there, but I have, experienced the blood test that I've done through my own personal doctor, that I do personally get tested every 6 months, regardless if I'm sexually active or not. It is just one thing that's on my regular doctor plan, but 6 months, let's just, do it along with other blood work that I get done. So that is always good. So maybe Ms. Hill, I know you can talk globally, possibly on what are the different forms of testing out there.
A lot of times they have what they do the blood test at the health center. We have the rapid test as well. And so, that's an option. Some places have actual swabs that they can do as well. So there are many, many different resources. If it's something where you're unsure, where you can figure out where to get tested in your area, always feel free to call me at the health center. I can do the research. I mean, that's what I do, I can do the research to help you find this information. The resources are out there. Anything that you need, I can find you the information. Even though you're not with us, on campus, I'm still on campus. So, I can help you guys. So anytime you need anything, feel free to call the health center. The number to the health center is 757-727-5315. You can call and ask to speak to Ms. Hill. If I'm out of the office, leave a message and I'll get back to you. But any resources that you may need, I'm willing, and I can find them wherever you are. I can find them. Okay. And so that is something that is available to you. And they do even have some, I'm sorry, I apologize. And they do even have some places where you can actually do mail-in testing as well. Yeah. So that's another option. And that's for a lot of different testing. So
that's what I was just about to say. I do have a friend, my best friend lives in Brooklyn, New York. And he said the process is a little different, but the results are still the same. He likes that effort even better because it is that, you're doing it yourself is a little bit more safe to him as far as confidentiality is concerned, because he is someone that has that stigma of, oh, somebody sees me going into the clinic, they assume something's wrong with me. So he tries to, he does a lot of things, but, in more metropolitan areas, you have more resources, you have more agencies, you have more government funded programs out there, a lot more health education systems that are out there. And that's one thing that I really believe that we are improving upon in the Hampton Roads community and on Hampton University's community campus is increasing our resources and our education aspects. But just to close out, because the evening is getting long, I just would like to thank everyone here for being a part of this conversation on knowing our status. You must know your status. So to our health educators, if you all could just share your Instagrams for the community that's watching now so they can follow you for further information.
Yes, the it's at HU Health Center. If you want to follow the health center, our personal for the Peer Health Educators is at HamptonU_PHE. And of course, HU Student Activities, they're always posting stuff for everyone to look at and be a part of.
All right. Nurse Val, we would like to thank you for helping us on this evening. Students, we appreciate you for your education and input. Ms. Hill, do you have any further comments?
I was also going to get Nurse Val to share her wellness Instagram handle, so that way they can also follow her as well.
Yes. Sure, it's at vp.of.wellbeing, all one word.
She's the VP of well-being, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, I love to see it.
Right? But most definitely, and like I said, and just like Mr. Harris said, and all the peer health educators and Nurse Val, just making sure that you are considering yourself as well as others and doing your part to slow the spread of everything. So we're trying to slow the spread of STIs, as well as the spread of COVID, just doing your part and everybody holding each other accountable. And then actually knowing and being an advocate for your health in general.
All right.
Okay, so I'm definitely, like I said, I still miss you guys always. We have a lot of good events coming up dealing with health
that's
and
what I was
health.
just about to announce. I was just about to drop it.
Please, we have a major announcement coming.
So here's the major announcement. But first, let's teach them. So first, anybody that's seen Ms. Hill and I's Health Matters program, along with your peer educators right here, in March, we are going to bring another episode of Health Matters, but we're going to put a little twist on it. We're going to be talking about love languages in our community and how it affects our health. So we're going to be talking about sex, mental issues, learning building better relationships, friendships for all well-being. So that's awesome. But first, Everybody, you hear it here first. Flyer will drop tomorrow. On this Monday, February 15th, Ms. Hill and I are hosting our first HU Blue Table Talk with some very special Hampton University administrators. We are going to have the authentic conversation on life after college. We're talking about the trials of love, finding the perfect relationship while you're building your career, making money. And I'm not going to release who the guests are, but I'm going to ask Hampton University, please tune in. But you will really be surprised at who's going to be on the table talking without their title position, hopefully, behind them. But we just have some great individuals. It's going to be a male. It's not really like going to be a male versus female conversation, but we're going to come together and talk about some life things, the growing pains of how to be successful, be balanced, but still find love, have fun after hours when you clock out of work. So please, everyone, please join us. We are releasing the flyer on tomorrow. It is the first episode of the HU Blue Table Talk. And then after that, we just got a bunch of collaborations to take us out throughout the year. Once again, Hampton University and community, we thank you for joining this important conversation. Please go get tested and know your stats.
Always know your status.
Know your
Yes.
stats. Be safe. Continue to follow your city CDC regulations in the midst of this COVID. We love you. We're sending virtual hugs to everyone.
Virtual hugs,
Virtual
Hampton
hugs.
hugs, all that good stuff. We
Yes.
miss you guys.
One time for the one time. Good
One time for the
afternoon
one
and have a great night.
See you guys at Blue Table Talks next Monday.
Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Gonna get personal, so I'm saying you might want to be there.